Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Doses of Nature. Today's presentation, Mysterious Machu Picchu, Inca City in the Cloud Forest, is brought to you by NatHab Expedition Leader Rosa Alegria. A proud native of Cusco, Rosa discovered her passion for tropical nature during teenage trips to the jungles of Quiabamba. Fluent in English, French, and Italian, she earned a degree in tourism from the University of San Antonio Abad and began her career as a naturalist in the southeastern Peruvian Amazon. A certified mountain guide with nearly 4 decades of experience, Rosa leads trekking, rafting, and cultural expeditions across Peru and also has guided in Ecuador and Bolivia. She is the founder of Grupo ANIC, which trains tourism professionals and has taught Incan history at the university level. Rosa lives in Cusco and spends her free time exploring the Andes she calls home. And we are so lucky to have her today. Rosa, thank you for being here. It's your show. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Rob. And I want to also offer my gratitude to each of you who are attending this presentation about Machu Picchu and Peru. Um, yes, in order to lead you towards the main topic of the presentation, I have to tell you some information that's quite important to basically locate Machu Picchu. The original name of the Inca state was Tawantinsuyo. Tawantinsuyo, this Inca state, had been um, had been since the 1200 to the 1532 AD. The territory, as you see this map of South America, was all the way from Colombia in a place called Ancashmayo River, and then it used to cover Ecuador or Peru, Bolivia, Chile, Argentina. As you can see, it was a large territory with over 3,500,000 square miles. And the population, even though there's so many of these references, but I like to take the lowest number, in this case, the population of 9 million people who used to live in all this extension in this in South America. The capital city was Cusco or Cusco, the wrong pronunciation of that navel of this Confederation of Nations. As you see, it's kind of like in the middle of this whole land, a place which was small, with more or less like about 120,000 people who had ruled basically this whole land without wheels and without writing and without any kind of iron tools. That is the most interesting to show you the grandeur of this country called Tawantinsuyo. Uh, we at Tawantinsuyo, as you see, look at the land enlarged this time, was kind of like a divided in four regions. There was this Chinjay-Suyo, which was this northeastern region, Antisuyo, the northeastern region, kind of like a very close to where the Amazon land starts. In the southeastern region, which was basically uh, this area along the coast, but also with so much resources in terms of mineral and in terms of different kind of uh, elements that they can actually take advantage of for their farming activities. And then we have also in the southern part, which gets all the way to Rio Maule in Chile. And as you see also part of Argentina. So they were the four natural regions that were identified by the Incas in order to get wherever they needed to, mainly metals and food, fertile land, and so forth. Then the capital city of this whole nation was Cusco. And Cusco, or Cusco nowadays pronounced in Spanish, used to be located right here, southeastern area of the country of Peru nowadays. But what I want to show you and share mainly is that from this very city was departing a main important um, royal road, which is going to the north all the way to, as I said before, to Colombia and Cashmayo. And then from Cusco, same idea, through the high plateau all the way to Argentina in Mendoza. And as you see, we have to see this red network of roads, which used to be about 37 miles of length, which was interconnected by so many of these branches from the coast to the mountain. As you see, all these red lines were the interconnection to the uh, to the Andean range valleys, but also to the valleys, to the coastal valleys. But every 15 miles of this road, starting in Cusco, every 15 miles, there was a very important political, religious, administrative center. And that's why we have so many names, as you see, right here, like with the names of Vilcashuamán, Hatuncoya, Chucuito, all these different places that used to go along these 37 miles of roads. But one of the things that was quite important and call us the reason of this presentation happens to be Machu Picchu. So if you locate it here, Cusco, from Cusco about 70 miles to the northeast, to the northwest, excuse me, is where Machu Picchu happens to be. This is the Urubamba Valley. Uh, it's about like starting in Cusco, as I said, 70 miles, but we do have other within the 70 miles of roads. We have many other locations such as Ollanta Tambo, such as Torontois, and many other different places until we get to Machu Picchu. This time following the railroad. As you see, look at the extension that had covered up in South America, but you see so many of these interesting sites all the way to Mendoza in Argentina, all the way to Colombia and Ancashmayo. Um, what I want to, first of all, uh, to share with you is how was the timeline of the history of Machu Picchu. It would take so many hours to basically get to the point, of the history of the Inca state. But what I want to locate first of all is this the time when Machu Picchu might have been built. And one of our greatest visionaries, whose name was Inca Pachacute, considered to be one of the most great organizers of the Inca nation, was the one who had started to build Machu Picchu. That gets from the 1438s till 1471s, but it's most likely that the construction might have been started before. We have to go back to 1420s all the way to the 1438s. One thing that's important, to decide to build a city to become an administrative center was the different kind of resources that he found in the area. One of the most important resources were, for instance, in this case, the amount of, first of all, water, of course, and then the amount of material that was, possible to be used for the construction of such a place. And in this case, Machu Picchu had a lot of beautiful white granite stone quarries, which were basically covering the whole site. But besides, also two different sources of water that had directed the main decision to build the city of Machu Picchu in this case. But to get to Machu Picchu, to get to the point, I also have to mention some historical events that had happened between the states, and especially in 1532, for instance, the arrival of the Spaniards. The arrival of the Spaniards, which was considered to be the Spanish conquest, although nowadays it's most likely that instead of being a conquest, it was an invasion, knowing from previous other explorers, these Spaniards decided to come directly to this land of the Incas in seek of gold and silver. Unfortunately, the time, 1532, it was sort of like a perhaps one of the worst crises that the whole incarnation had arrived to, and this is the civil war that had happened between two brothers. One of the brothers was the resident Inca king in Cusco, the capital city, and the other one was the Inca, the Emperor Atahualpa, who was the itinerant king who was exploring usually the northern area, the areas of Ecuador nowadays, and who basically had created such a crisis. Eventually, in 1532, we had the arrival of the Spaniards, and unfortunately, the Inca Atahualpa, the King Atahualpa, gets to be captured, and in order to free himself, he offers a full room of gold and couple full rooms of silver, and that has led into more ambition to these Spaniards to basically eventually poison him and then kill with the only purpose to get to the main to the place where they got this gold from, and that was Cusco, the Cusco city. After a few more months later, in 1533, they managed to get to Cusco, but not having not one leader or an emperor to control the city of Cusco, they ended up choosing to a young man whose name was Manco Inca in 1533. Manco Inca is a young man, brother of the fighting brothers, who was still by then 17 years old, who was not trained to be the new leader, although he became forcibly by the Spaniards as a puppet Inca between 1533 to 1536. Manco Inca decides to organize a hidden um, revolution against the Spaniards, which out of that he became very victorious, but enough time for him to basically escape towards the last city of the Inca, which name is Vilcabamba, another administrative center, and that's where he might have stayed for a while. But eventually, nobody knows what happened. None of the chroniclers, neither the historians of the 1600s, gets to know about what happened between 1536 and 1541. There's the speculation that Manco Inca might have taken Machu Picchu as a temporary refuge in order like to hide from the Spaniards. Eventually, of course, uh, Manco Inca was found in 1541. But between these 6 years, more or less, between 1533 and 1539, Francisco Pizarro, who's the protagonist of the Spaniards expedition, who's in Cusco, they start to confiscate a lot of land, and part of this land um, is given to one of his brothers, one of the first encomenderos, which means an encomendero means owner of like a really large extensions of land, including whoever was living in these areas, in these huge pieces of land. Hernando Pizarro, brother of Francisco Pizarro, becomes the new owner of this encomienda called Amaibamba and Picchu, meaning Machu Picchu. This information came from the indigenous taxpayers of that time. Eventually, the property becomes and is transferred to another guy whose name is Diego Arias Maldonado. Uh, well, Manco Inca being found in 1541 might have been his area between Machu Picchu and Vilcabamba, or the area from where he was basically trying to recover the Inca organization. And that's the importance of mentioning Manco Inca, because that's part of the geographical region where he was working in trying to recover the nation of the Incas. Between 1541 and 1566, Machu Picchu might have been gradually abandoned. The fact is that by 1568, the area didn't have any taxpayers. These areas are called Amaibamba and Machu Picchu, which were eventually found abandoned, and Viceroy Francisco Toledo authorized to do the distribution of this land. And in Cusco, there were about 52 indigenous families who were selected to be taken to these areas, Amaibamba and Machu Picchu. Eventually, by 1572, uh, the government of the Viceroyal Francisco de Toledo gives property titles to the descendants of these 52 indigenous relatives, where many Inca villages, including Machu Picchu, were located. By 1633 and 1714, the descendants of these 52 families, they get reconfirmed with their property titles between 1633, 1662, 1714 as permanent residents, like families, Uskamaitas, Conchas, and other ones who were the original owners of all this land. What's the point of all this relation of different dates? Is to let you know that Machu Picchu basically was populated by different families. And because of that, of course, they had requested the accessibility and they had asked to the Peruvian government to be built a road. In this case, the road was built from Ollantaytambo to Santana. And if you let me go back to the maps, let me just go back a little bit towards the maps. One more time. Here, this is Cusco. And just in this particular little section is where Ollantaytambo, Machu Picchu, and eventually this Quillabamba is further up about this area. That's where this road was actually built. And this is what I referred to the construction of the road that had started in Ollantaytambo to Santana, Quillabamba. By 1849, some of the owners, some of the surviving owners of all this land, in this case, this particular man, whose name is Valentin Uscamaita, gives in donation to his godfather, Mariano Santos, and specifically the area of Machu Picchu and the surrounding areas, which was not supposed to be sold, neither donated. That's kind of like at the end of the story about the permanent residents of these areas. Let me also tell you what happened between 1849 to 1871. These people, it seems that were regular taxpayers to the Spaniard crown and to the protectors, the Spaniards. But eventually, in 1871, we have, part of the Republic beginning. This is after the independence of Simon Bolivar, who had declared in 1821 to 1826 the rule of the colonialist Spanish country over the Peruvian country. So we have this Peruvian government who decided to hire this German mineralogist and cartographer who got hired by the Peruvian government to explore these sections here, this map, as you see, the Urubamba Valley, starting in Ollantaytambo, followed by the Canyon of Urubamba. But the intention was basically to figure out if there is, if of the existence of a lot of potential mining areas. Being a mineralogist, he quite successfully had identified and had made different kind of maps about the area. Finally, in 1874, he managed to hand a map to the Peruvian government, and it's when Machu Picchu and Huayna Picchu was already recorded on the map. It's telling you that there's a continuation of the existence of this Inca city, obviously not anymore in the original conditions that used to be back in 1836 when Manco Inca had used this area as a refuge. Although an overgrown vegetation that basically had hidden this Inca city. Hermann Göring registers Machu Picchu in this map, and that was basically the beginning of the interest of many different other entrepreneurs such as Augusto Burns, German, who came more or less in 1871, but eventually in 1873, he comes not with the intention to visit Machu Picchu, although with the intention to figure out if this valley and this canyon of Urubamba had gum trees and also quinine trees. But since his interest had turned out into possible treasure hunting, it seems that he decided to rent a place right across Machu Picchu, and where he decided to do his base to collect wood. In this case, whatever wood he could find, because there was no gum trees, neither quinine bark over the area. Eventually, interestingly, he got interested about Machu Picchu. He even had a little sketch of a map that was found by this American explorer whose name is Paolo Greer, who had found this sketch in the National Peruvian Library. And with this sketch, he basically is confirming that some of the earliest visitors were not just Augusto Burns, but also Hermann Göring, the cartographer and mineralogist that I had mentioned before. Between 1873 to 1887, there was a lot of illegal treasure hunting by many different foreigners, but also associated with locals. In this case, in 1887, Augusto Burns have decided to create a company uh, called Huacas del Inca, asking uh, the authorization to do more official excavations in what is Machu Picchu. Uh, so this had created a lot of animosities and a lot of curiosity from the local intellectual who basically had encouraged to prohibit these illegal excavations in which artifacts were not given to the Peruvian government, although taken to different other countries, such as, like, for instance, to fill out some of the museums, like in Berlin and even in Chicago. Um, by 1897, the same intellectuals decided to create a scientific center of Cusco, which goal was to do scientific and geographic studies of the region, while its work helped document and raise cultural and archaeological research. Those were not the only institution. There was another one also created in 1905. But meanwhile, we have a very important visitor who was a history professor of the University of Yale, whose specialty was to do Latin American studies. And one of his initial works in South America was to do the life of Simon Bolivar and his importance as the independentist of not just Peru, but of all of different countries of South America. Hiram Bingham, a history professor who came in 1909 mainly to do exploring. And in this case, if you see this map, the map actually shows you like the yellow line in this case, 1909. That was his first exploration, um, mainly motivated by a lot of the Inca sites they have seen before in Cusco. And in this case, he was invited to visit this place called Choquequirao. And as you see, says the region of Vilcabamba, where he made one of the major explorations. So eventually in 1911, he comes back, this time much more prepared with different specialists, and they start to explore the Urubamba Valley. If you see this red line, this is part of this Urubamba Valley. It gets to Torontoy, and this would be the area of Machu Picchu. Interestingly, in this map, it doesn't show the names of Machu Picchu, neither Machu Picchu, as it was in the previous map, like this German mineralogist and cartographer had drawn, as you see, in 1874. Going back to the same map, it was not the only exploration that he done. By 1911, uh, it got all the way to Santana, in this case, oh, excuse me, to Vilcabamba, what he had considered the last uh, the last and the lost city of the Inca eventually, to eventually turn out to figure out that the last city that he decided to call and the lost city of the Incas was Machu Picchu. Um, Other explorations were done also in 1912. As you see, 1912 was done, all these blue lines, still in the same region, but look at the different stretches that he's exploring around. Over here, so many of these he's really interested that ends up in Quillabamba, this tropical town, which road was built by the previous uh, by this previous visitor who was Hermann Goring, who had worked for the Peruvian government, who had built this road starting over in Ollantaytambo over to Quillabamba. And again, look, the road is passing through Machu Picchu area, which is right here. 1912, he comes back with a much more serious and what it was called the scientific expedition to Machu Picchu, supported by obviously by the University of Yale, but also the National Geographic Society. Hiram Bingham, during all couple of years between 1909 to 1911, had met also one of the most renowned um, authorities of our National University of San Antonio Abad del Cusco, Albert Gisek, who was basically had suggested to Hiram Bingham to do all this exploration, and he had provided a lot of assistance and local institutional backing to Hiram Bingham. Finally, in 1911, July 24th, Hiram Bingham finds Machu Picchu in this condition. If you look at it carefully, look at the background, so much vegetation of almost 400 years, 500 years that had covered up and had hidden all the city. That is the way how Hiram Bingham had found the Machu Picchu area in July 24, 1911. Hiram Bingham had obviously requested authorization in order to conduct different kind of excavations. At the same time, Max Euler and Julio Cetello, which were very renowned archaeologists, were assigned to oversee the work of Hiram Bingham. In 1912, 1913, 14, 15, was there was constant work that was done of clearing the vegetation of Machu Picchu. All these 4 years of work was directed by the osteologist George Eaton under the supervision of Mr. Hiram Bingham. But eventually, in 1930s, we had also Luis E. Valcárcel, who's a local historian and an archaeologist who had made a major, massive clearing of the vegetation of Machu Picchu. Then we have another local important archaeologist who happened to be also one of my professors, and back in 1997, 8, and 9, who's been the one of the directors of the archaeological park of Machu Picchu, who was in charge of the restoration of many different main areas of Machu Picchu. And then Fernando Astete, another local important anthropologist, who's been the director of the archaeological park for about 20 years, from 1999 to 2019. Why am I mentioning all these people? This is to give you also the information that there's a lot of local, important, renowned researchers who have been part of the way how Machu Picchu looks nowadays. Look at this photograph. This is in 1968. Finally, Machu Picchu was declared to be an archaeological park of Machu Picchu, who was mainly, that was actually managed by the Department of Archaeological Board of Cusco. In 1972, we had this institute, National Institute of Culture, who managed to have the recognition in 1972, a global recognition of Machu Picchu, this institute was responsible of its preservation, maintenance, and different other activities due to around the different archaeological sites within the park. Not just that, but in 1981, Machu Picchu gets to be declared a National Historic Sanctuary because of the importance, not just of the archaeological remains, but also of the environmental value of the area. Now, finishing up all the timeline of the history of Machu Picchu, let me take a different perspective this time. There's obviously so many questions about how and why these Incas decided to go over to this area called nowadays Machu Picchu. But this area, as you see this map, this is the Andean region. This brown area is all the Andean region. But as you see, there's a border here between the Andean region and the Amazon jungle area. Just exactly where it is found what we call nowadays a cloud forest, this area, because this is right at the border of these two important geographical stripes of Peru. This is the whole Amazon. The Incas got interested because of the different kind of resources. For instance, what? Copper, and perhaps even gold and silver. Although, unlike the pre-Inca people, Incas didn't use much gold and silver. Uh, the amount of metals were not as much as it was collected by the northerner pre-Inca societies. In this case, this area was the possible provider for all these elements, but not just that. There were other reasons also for it. And some of the reasons, look, before I continue, let me just introduce to what looks like Machu Picchu nowadays. Machu Picchu happens to be at an elevation of 8,400 feet above sea level. At that time, back in the between the 1400s, might have a population of about 300 to 400 people. And then, and this is what I was meaning when I told you the cloud forest, the constant, presence of a lot of fog around this beautiful setting of mountains, as you see here. This is usually in the rainy season, although in the dry season, it's not as much as fog as you see right here. The reason why the Incas might have decided to choose this site, not just the resources, but also the whole setting of all these sacred mountains. These mountains, for these explorers, for the first explorers who might have been between the 12, 13, or even the beginning of the 1400, might have been the reason for them to choose the site. A possible, like a glorious sunrise and a magnificent, sunset might have been the indication and the perfect place to be connected to the gods, to the mountain gods. But not just that, to the Father Sun and to the other different stars of the cosmos. The setting is really very inspiring when you see, and it doesn't matter to what religion or to what kind of a belief you could have, just the contact that you have between you and these mountains will give you the idea to become inspired to do this such a great city uh, like Machu Picchu as it looks like right now. Then let me take you a little bit around Machu Picchu area. For instance, here we have this photograph that shows you, this extension of land, which is more or less about 16 acres of land, perhaps enough land for different kind of experimentation of the adaptation of plants. What kind of plants? For instance, corn. For instance, coca leaves. For instance, chili peppers, or even potatoes, where this terrace is built for in order to figure out which were the ones that was the most, the perfect crop that could actually be sustainable in time to feed the people who are going to be permanent residents in this area. But besides that, also, let me tell you the historical context of this by showing you this, for instance, this particular rock, which has been called the funerary rock. Most of these names were actually given by Hiram Bingham. And the reason why is because around this area, at the foot of this great massive mountain called Machu Picchu, was chosen, this area was chosen to be part of the one of the graveyards grave grounds. And this very rock was sculpted for the purpose to do mummification of these skeletons which were buried in these areas. As you see, it has like a three different steps and a flat, surface, which was the area to do the mummification activity. But besides that, also we have other areas now that is so clear. During all these 115 years, there was a constant work that was done by all the professionals and researchers that I had mentioned before. They had found lookouts, for instance, like this particular lookout, that are actually using different kind of natural stone formations to create sort of like a balconies to look, in this case, in this particular case, to see, the western side of the city. Machu Picchu is protected by a lot of cliffs, and that actually makes it uh, uh, so unusual compared to other uh, political, religious, administrative centers. Some of the most important sites, like for instance, in this case, the main temple of Machu Picchu, look, it even presents a kind of a crack due to a possible geological fault underneath. But this very place was never finished. This place was still under construction, and the reason why is because no materials were found inside, neither outside, which means that a lot of the rocks, like this one, was still under preparation to complete this whole structure that was to be part of the main temple. This temple, the same case, is actually happens to be nearby, just next to this main temple, the temple of the three windows, which is still missing, the uh, the this part of the temple that was still under construction, although it might have been already used. The fact is that out of the three windows, there was a lot of ceramic that might have been thrown to the mountain gods in order to do an offering. A lot of material were found by Hiram Bingham, and this material happens to be part of the different artifacts that were taken to the University of Yale, but eventually was returned to Peru in a number of 4,000 more than 4,000 different artifacts that are exposed in one of the museums in Cusco nowadays. And here we have this couple of mountains that usually this particular mountain that is in the backside of the city is not shown. The typical mountain that we see in general in the photographs is this one, Huayna Picchu. Machu Picchu, Machu, by the way, means old, wise, and Picchu means mountain. Huayna, in this case, young, Picchu mountain. So, which means that this mountain was called Machu Picchu, and this one Huayna Picchu. As you see, these great, magnificent mountains were playing the important role of being protectors, protectors of the people, protectors of the area. That's why they were giving some of these names. And this is the set of all these sacred mountains, as you see right here. But the important thing that I'm showing here is the photograph of the Temple of the Sun. If you see this semicircular shape, you can tell, how different was from other structure, which were mostly rectangular. They have used this natural rock, which is working as the base, as the foundation of this uh, C-shape structure, which is this that almost looks like a tower. But what was interesting is they have used this natural rock to be as a mausoleum that eventually Hiram Bingham gave the name of Royal Mausoleum. Um, these were quite important, places, not not just as a royal mausoleum, but as an astronomical observatory that was used, this very structure, particularly this kind of a window. The projection of the sun that was coming, pointed out and oriented to this window, it would create a kind of a vertical shadow, and that was a possible reference for a year going by. And we also have the importance of this set of these sacred mountains were were shown in the way how, for instance, this natural rock was shaped out, sort of like a duplicating the mountain in the back side. This mountain happens to be this one here. but interestingly, it's been built with the purpose to create an altar. See this set of this line of rocks here. This altar was to set up different kind of offerings. Perhaps they made these Incas had made a close-up mountain and representing the mountain in the back. It's very interesting the way how we can actually match the existence of that particular sacred rock. And as you see here, again, this is the Machu Picchu mountain that actually has a trail that leads you all the way up to the very summit. It would take about 3 hours to get to the summit. But the top of these mountains were used as communication centers. The Incas would actually use very shiny metals in order like to catch the sunshine, and they will send different kind of flashes to communicate with the different mountains in the surrounding. The summit of this mountain happens to be at 10,500 feet above sea level, so which was a major, altitude in order to be able to communicate with the other smaller or shorter mountains in the surroundings. And this is the little guardian's house that I showed you before. But what's important right here happens to be one of these major quarries that I had mentioned before. This white granite stone quarry that was initially, before they built all these different terraces, was all over this area. Nothing of what you see of Machu Picchu in these photographs are natural. Everything was planned, everything was built, and the different kind of materials that were in this quarries were removed in this way. Interestingly, we still have evidences of some of these stone rollers right in Machu Picchu, which we do not have access anymore nowadays. But this is the way how these stone rollers were used to transport some of these heavy rocks, which are part, of the construction of Machu Picchu. But a lot of these rocks were also removed, helped by gravity and by the expertise of some of these people who had the experience of building different Andean administrative centers of the Incas. Another interesting thing is these astronomical mirrors. These mirrors, these stones were removed in order to be right in the center of these structures, as you see, and it actually kind of presents similar hollow carved stones in order like a two with water in it, in order like a to catch the reflection in this particular case of the moon, but also some of the reflection of some of the sun rays that will come out through this window directed to this particular mirrors. It was not the only official astronomical mirrors, or which used to serve as instruments, so to say, for these astronomical observations. But also, right in the house, in the royal house, there's a couple of these carved stones, which are simulating also some of these kind of astronomical mirrors, as we call it now right now, for the same purpose, which was more important to have in front of this royal house uh, rather than just regular mortars at one time, was where it identified. This is the quite. This is the perhaps of all the other different uh, places that we have, including Cusco, some of the most valuable sites happens to be these astronomical mirrors, like we have in Machu Picchu, because Cusco doesn't have it, because the whole city was totally destroyed, and especially anything that actually will tell you that the Incas were so developed and they were already figuring out these astronomical observations. Uh, Here we have this whole set of rooms, which were used as structures, which were a structure used for workshops for metallurgical, textile, and ceramic production. Here we have the water fountains, and these water fountains were used for ritual purposes. There were two different areas from where they used to get the water from. Here we have another temple, the Temple of the Condor. By the way, if you look carefully, these natural rocks, they're representing the wings of a condor. This is one of them, the other wing on the other side. And if you see carefully this whole rock, which was being removed from somewhere else, like a to carve out the head of this condor, as you see here, it presents the eyes here, the eyes of the head of the condor, and look at it, this semicircular shape of rock is representing the white feather color that condor has. Now, what is the importance of all this information? It's mainly to figure out what kind of people used to live there. Was it according to the different excavations that George Eaton, part of the expedition of Yale with Hiram Bingham, had identified different kind of bodies. But nowadays we can mention that one of the most renowned bioarchaeologists, Dr. Verano, had decided to recheck a lot of the bones that uh, were actually stored at the University of Yale basement. And according to George Eaton, this is the kind of people who had lived there. But if we just checked for George Eaton, the number of people who used to live were mostly females. Although in counterpart of Dr. Verano, who made a lot of analysis in different sets of bones of about 170 skeletons, he found out that there was these kind of numbers were not precisely, the number of regular population. In the 170 skeletons were found that there was there was so many people who used to have over 50 years old, a lot of males, the same way females, and also teenagers, and even babies, and also children, which is telling us that there was a regular population who used to be residents of this political, religious, administrative center of Machu Picchu. And another thing that Dr. Verano found out is that not all of them were from the same DNA. It tells us also that multi-ethnic people came from different places to build Machu Picchu. There were some people coming from the jungle. There are people coming from the northern part of this of the Inca Nation. There are people who are coming even from the areas of Argentina through the system of mita, which is one way to pay taxes to the Inca state. Artifacts that were found, these are just a couple of pictures that I show you of the thousands of different kind of artifacts that were found thanks to the local archaeologists, such as, for instance, Alfredo Montoy, such as Elba Torres, Francisco Astete, the ones who had found different kind of ceramic objects like silver pins and this kind of domestic use artifacts in ceramic. But one of the most valuable contemporary finding was made by this anthropologist and archaeologist, Elba Torres, who had found in a public plaza of Machu Picchu this gold bracelet. It has about like a 56% of gold matter in it, and about like a 40% of silver and even copper that made this beautiful bracelet that's exposed in one of the in the museum in the Machu Picchu grounds. On the other hand, how do these people in Machu Picchu used to dress? What kind of materials they used to use for their clothing? In the different kind of burial sites and in different excavations were found a lot of fiber of alpaca. These are alpacas, of vicuñas, these gracious animals that usually lives above 12,000 feet all the way to 14 and 16,000 feet, having one of the best, finest fiber of the world, not even comparable to what's cashmere, neither Angora. There were found fibers of this couple of animals, but also cotton. Cotton was not grown in these areas. Cotton came all the way from the western side of the Inca Nation. And as you see, didn't just have the colors of white, they had also dark browns and light browns and even green and even a bit kind of like a reddish color, which are being discovered with the archaeological work. Besides that, in the different kind of research that they've done of the topsoils, were found seeds of coca leaves. How important was coca leaves? It was an important nutritional supplement, holder of a lot of different kind of minerals, but especially of calcium, highly craved by high altitude people who used to live in the high plateaus. But also, besides that, medicinal herbs. Those were the reasons why the Incas wanted to go to the eyebrow of the jungle, but even to the Amazon area. Other kind of foods also that they were found and it was consumed by the permanent residents of Machu Picchu people were not just potatoes that used to come not just from the area but also from higher altitudes. Quinoa was another one, and 4 different varieties of corn which were found, in Machu Picchu. But we usually forget what used to grow also in the lower valleys of Machu Picchu. Urubamba River happens to be at 6,000 feet. Inca City happens to be at 8,400. But along the Urubamba River, we used to have a lot of different kind of tropical goods. And in this case, for instance, nowadays we call this lucuma or egg fruit. It's a kind of a starchy, rich, kind of like a peach-like taste. And also avocados, quite important in the diet of the people in Machu Picchu. Peanuts also, and then cocoa, chocolate. Who's not going to be, to have such a good nutrient of cocoa beans to make chocolate? Part of the diet also, we had, alpacas. Alpaca bones were found there, which means that the people in Machu Picchu had eaten a lot of alpacas. Uh, Besides also agoutis. This agoutis is a kind of a rodent which is really rich in fat, but obviously also the guinea pigs, which was a common to have in the different Andean societies, but also deers. A lot of bones of deers, agoutis, and then also alpacas, as I mentioned before, and also guinea pigs were found in the grounds of Machu Picchu area. Another interest to go into the jungle were to make also alliances with the different Amazonic tribes because they were the main providers of important resources such as feathers which were used for the different ornaments for funerary purpose. All these feathers are coming from tropical birds, including hummingbirds, including macaws, including birds, unusual birds that you will have like a white feathers. But as you see, these are little silver miniature statuettes which were found in burial sites. That's why the Incas were quite interested to get into the Amazon area. As you see, look at this kind of a shirt that is actually where it has feather decorations of different kind of tropical birds, mostly most likely with parrots, for instance, all these green colors, but also blue and yellow macaws. This yellow and blue are coming from macaws, but also as ornament in the on the hairdresses of the mummies. But besides that, also I want to acknowledge that Machu Picchu is not just the fountain of a lot of knowledge of history and archaeology, but also of a lot of different kind of varieties of plants, but also mainly orchids. According to one of these important, renowned biologists, Mr. Collantes, about 425 orchid species had been documented in the whole Machu Picchu historic sanctuary. With this, I have to finish. I hope I had achieved a little bit of information in your for you, and I'm putting in the last page if you want to have more further information. We have all these references of different anthropologists between local and international ones, whose, for instance, I forgot to mention Mr. Solowski, who had made a lot of studies in of, of the different places for astronomical purposes. And then this I leave it for you if you want to do further reading in the history of Inca, of the Inca history of Machu Picchu, and also Inca history in general. With this, thank you very much, and I leave you the contact of NatHab if you ever want to join us in an expedition led by Rosa Alegria. Here I am. I'll be waiting for you with my open arms. Thank you very much.
Rosa, thank you so much. So before we dive into some questions, we do have a few minutes. I'd like to remind you, if you do have them, please submit them via the question field in your control panel. So let's just get to a few questions real quick.
Please.
So we see some of the walls that are still standing there. It's amazing that they're still there. What were the roofing material? What was the roofs made of? And since they're gone.
Yes, the roofs were made out of natural grass that used to grow uh, up above 12,000 feet, and they used to be transferred all the way to Machu Picchu. They were thatch roofs. They would use like a wood, vines to tie up all this grass, and they made a very high pitched, roofs, like to make more impermeable to the heavy rains. Cloud forests are usually a very humid area, and so it needed to be very thick and very high. So the rain will run faster, so it could keep uh, at least for 8 to 10 years.
Gotcha. Thank you. Um, so it's amazing that anything has survived so long. How do they manage to preserve all those artifacts without having them be broken even further?
Interestingly, with so much between illegal and legal excavation, thanks to the clearing of the vegetation, many of them were hidden, and especially in different kind of caves, which were base of burial sites, and that's how they were found in very good condition, some of these artifacts. But in general, the majority of the artifacts that were found, for instance, by Hiram Bingham and by the following, between 1911 all the way to 1970s, were not in good condition. Many of them were broken. So I think vegetation was the main protection for it, especially of all these burial sites.
Gotcha. Thank you. And what was the weather like for them? Did they get snow back?
Not really. Machu Picchu area, being in the cloud forest, it is kind of more like a warmer compared to, for instance, the capital city of Cusco. Capital city of Cusco happens to be at 10,400, but as soon as you drop down like about 2,000 feet above sea level, it already gets you into what we call this cloud forest, which is already humid, it's warmer during the day. Yes, during the night it will drop, sometime to more or less like a 10 or like a 8 degrees Celsius.
Are they still conducting excavations now?
Nowadays, there's different kind of projects that are presented by interested archaeologists, but it's quite hard to get it now because, in fact, about like I should say like about 2% of the whole site was uncovered, and still that 8% or even a little more, according to the specialists, there'll be places that they still need to uncover or search. For instance, like Machu Picchu has the main city that is exposed in the different kind of photos are clear, but there are other different other sites uh, in between the city and the river area. We have 4 different areas that are being still clear out and they're still being under investigation. So, for instance, we have one of our archaeologists with the name of Alfredo Mormontoy, who had found what he calls the archaeological garbage area, where he had found a lot of small lamins of gold and silver and a lot of broken ceramic. So he wishes, for instance, to still continue to do these excavations in nearby area So, but it takes a lot of time to present the project and to, finally execute it. This is mainly because of this Ministry of Culture, who gives a lot of different kind of limitations in order to preserve the site.
So let me ask you, when I come to visit you down there in Machu Picchu, what are you most excited to show me when I come down?
The most beautiful set of mountains that we have across the city. And obviously, to tell you the history of Machu Picchu, which is perhaps a very, very, in my case, being, I don't know if I belong to the descendants of the elite or to the poorest class, but the fact that I get really very emotional when I have to tell you this is history and then show you the grandeur. Of this city of Machu Picchu, but not just Machu Picchu, Cusco and the Secret Valley and the different other religious, political, administrative centers, which has a lot of vestiges, a lot of archaeological remains that we're really excited to show you. So when you come, I'll be here to show you all these places.
Well, I'm sure I'm not the only person who would be looking forward to coming to visit you. But unfortunately, that is going to be the last question that we have time for today, Rosa. So
All right.
I'd like to hand it back to you if you have any closing comments to make for us.
Well, the only thing I have to tell you is like, thanks to tourism, we can tell you that uh, all these places were they got in a better shape. The reason why you see Machu Picchu the way how you've seen in previous photographs is mainly because of the contribution uh, you as tourists, when you come, you pay really this entrance fees that help us to to show you the way it is. Like if you see these pictures, the reason why it looks this way is because of the constant work of maintenance that the workers are doing. And thanks to all your visitors, Machu Picchu is going to be like this, and it's going to get even better uh, for your visits, and, uh, and also provide a lot of jobs through and learn about the Inca culture. With this, thank you very much.
And Rosa, thank you so much for taking the time to present for us today. And I'd like to thank everyone who joined us today. So if you are interested in information on how you can travel to Machu Picchu and visit Rosa, please give us a call at 800-543-8917, or you can send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are happy to help you out. Join us tomorrow for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody. We'll
Thank you
see you
very
next
much.
time.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Goodbye,
Thank you. Thank you,
Rosa.
Robert. Bye.